This video is long overdue. I've been meaning to have this conversation with you guys for a while, and in a way, it's actually good that I waited because new things have been announced that make sense to include in this video. But before we get started, let me address the elephant in the room. You must have certainly noticed that my studio looks quite a bit different. I got rid of my Game Boys, they've been sold. Same thing with my display cases with some of my collectibles, which have also either been sold or are going to be put up for sale. I am moving back to Brazil, as I'm sure most of you know. I was born in Brazil. I immigrated to Canada when I was 19. I spent the last 20 years of my life here. This is really all I've known as an adult. I've gone back home, I've traveled, but I never lived anywhere else but here. But since I became a self-sufficient adult, this really is the reality I've known. There's a lot about life in North America that I'm thankful for, but the time has come to go back home, and unfortunately, it makes more sense to me to relinquish these possessions. It's just not very easy to travel with all this stuff back there. It's just too expensive, it's too much of a hassle, and I want to be traveling more. Another thing that you guys probably didn't know is that for the last 10 years, I've had a career outside of YouTube. I used to work in the local healthcare industry, and being a healthcare worker throughout the worst pandemic in our generation, I can tell you, it sucks. And it put a lot of things into perspective. I realized that these things that I surrounded myself with obviously weren't making me happy. I decided to try something else. So sorry for the huge disclaimer. I imagine the overwhelming majority of you did not care about any of this, but because the channel will undoubtedly go through some changes, already is, because of this, it made sense to address this. Anyway, let me talk about the actual subject of this video. I apologize and I thank you for your patience. We're living a portable renaissance, or a handheld Jeez, I can't even... Maybe I should go back to Brazil. I can't speak English anymore. We're living through a portable renaissance. There's been so many different options. And in fact, just like if I reach out right here without even getting up from my seat, there are handhelds that I've yet to review. I mean, I've covered the Mio Mini here on the channel. This is the Mio Mini Plus. It's bigger, younger sibling, I guess I could call it. Amazing device. I haven't covered on the channel here yet because, as you can see, I'm moving to a different country and restarting my life from scratch because I'm going through some kind of midlife crisis, according to some of my friends. Anyway, it seems like every day there's some new device. We have the Steam Deck, which is basically having a gaming laptop in a more portable form factor. Definitely better for traveling. And to all of you who've been outrageous at the idea that I haven't gotten my own Steam Deck yet, I don't play my Steam library enough to justify buying it. That's the only reason. But perhaps in this new stage in my life, having something like the Steam Deck makes a lot more sense. We have everything under the sun now. So, you know, the Steam Deck, we have these portable emulators that are better suited for, 16-bit. Oh, I mean, these run PS1 games really well too, so I guess up to like the 32-bit era is really their cutoff. And you got everything in between. And not just with the dedicated handhelds, but with services like Game Pass. Gaming on the phone has never been this sophisticated. I'm currently beating Gears of War 5 entirely on my phone, and that is incredible. If you told me 10 years ago that one day I would have access to the entire Gears of War franchise on my goddamn phone, I wouldn't have believed you. In fact, I still remember way back in the day when the Touch Arcade forums used to be my stomping grounds. And by the way, Eli Hodap, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, I guess I was kind of a dick. And I remember when mobile games first started using the Unreal Engine, people were speculating, like, does this mean that one day perhaps we could have Gears of War on a cell phone? And yes, what we got isn't quite what they were proposing. Running something through a streaming service isn't the same as having that run on the actual hardware, but what difference does it make? I can play Gears of War 5 on my goddamn phone. Get off my back. And as I was getting ready to shoot this video, Sony finally announced its long-rumored return to the, I guess, handheld. I have to use the air quotes. It's not exactly a handheld. It's more like they reinvented the Wii U. It's a portable device that streams PS5 games, but at least at the moment, you can only do that at home with games that need to be installed on your PS5. Not a great application, but again, I still like the idea of Sony returning to the portable-ish space. Even if this crashes and burns terribly, and they decide to never look back on portable devices again, and then use the failure of Project Q as a pretext for that, I hope that doesn't happen. What I really would have liked to see is like something like a PSP 2, not the Vita, because that thing was put out and then abandoned. And in fact, what happened with the Vita and what was happening with the 3DS, which, as you may remember, had a bit of a slow launch, Even I thought, and I'm a huge portability fanatic, but even I thought that perhaps the age of portable consoles was over. At the time, I used to write for a big tech website back in Brazil, and I actually wrote an article about how I thought that perhaps as phones become more sophisticated and capable of pushing more detailed graphics and bigger franchises come to the mobile platforms, maybe we're seeing the end of the era of the portables. But I was obviously, thankfully, very wrong. As somebody who has been covering this space, the portable console space, for as long as I've had a YouTube channel, this is an extremely exciting moment in time. It used to be, and in fact I might still have it, it's one of the many things I have to sell from my collection. It's here somewhere. The Dingo A320, this thing right here. It was the very first portable emulation device I ever reviewed, and it was kind of a piece of crap, even for the time. The screen had terrible viewing angles, the buttons were awful, the interface, don't even get me started. It was a piece of crap, but it was so amazing to have a portable device that ran these games all in the same device without any need for modding or anything like that. This kind of functionality has been around for a long time if you had a modded PSP or something like that, but that required a little bit more effort. The idea of something that comes through the mail, you open it, you throw in an SD card, and then all the games are there and they all run with no hassle, well, in a way that hasn't really been fully realized. The main beef I have with these devices is that these manufacturers, right, like Emberneck and the guys over at Miu Mini, I'm not sure what they're called actually. The first thing that these guys put out was the BitBoy. So for a while I thought the company was called BitBoy, and in fact, the very first BitBoy in the UI, it says Miu. So obviously the branding is connected in some way. The devices look very similar, but I never knew exactly when one company stopped. I have no idea what the hell's going on there. Okay, this is what I'm trying to say. Like I was saying before, the idea of being able to just take it out of the box and fire it up and having it working perfectly is something that these companies haven't quite nailed it just right, in my opinion. All of these devices in some capacity or another require you to, take out the SD card or sometimes replace it entirely because they're just kind of crappy, really cheap, and then, install custom firmware and all this, change your ROMs because they came with a weird naming scheme and there's a bunch of numbers in the front, so they're out of order, and if you're OCD like me, that's just a complete deal breaker, right? Anyway, I love how many options we have, even though, these devices need a little bit of work. They don't fully work right out of the box with a few exceptions. It's nice to have, so many devices, and if I hadn't been so depressed over the last few months, you would have seen so much content about these devices. I still want to make it. I'm not getting rid of all of them now that I'm going to be living more of a nomadic lifestyle. These portable devices make more sense than ever. I'll get rid of most of my collection because who needs 37 handheld devices to play Super Mario World, right? I play mostly the same, like 5 SNES games on these things. So, I'll keep a few that are my, huge personal favorites. Like something like the Miu Mini. There's no reason to ever get rid of this thing. It's so freaking tiny, right? It's a perfect travel companion. So, getting quickly back to the thing about moving back to Brazil, that is something I have to talk to you guys about in regards to the theme of the channel. I still want to cover tech. I still want to do the same content that I've always done, and I imagine, I hope anyway, that the change in scenery is going to inspire me to get back to having fun making this, Like, this is fun. I miss this. It's funny. Years ago when I would hear about content creators talking about being burnt out and stuff, I didn't quite understand it. It took me, many years of basically doing double duty, a full-time job in healthcare through a pandemic and a full-time job creating content. I get it now, why sometimes it's hard to... If a YouTuber that you like stopped making videos, reach out and ask if everything's okay and maybe say that you appreciate their work because it makes a big difference. The people who have noticed my absence and reached out and asked for new videos, the only reason I'm back here is because of your support, so I thank you. I do have to say that I will probably migrate my content slightly. Ironically, most of my career on the Brazilian side of the internet was about showing Brazilians what Canada was like. Now I find myself in the reverse position where I have a small platform here of English speakers and I can now show you guys what Brazil is like. I think that'll be interesting. I liked creating travel content back in the day when my channel was mostly focused on that. I have an opportunity to return to that kind of content, and I think travel content and portable handhelds, they go together really well, right? So perhaps this is an interesting direction to take the channel. Things need to change after all, right? Who wants to be the same person forever? I certainly don't. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about this new portable gaming renaissance. I love the fact that there's so many new devices coming out. I will get the Steam Deck at some point. I swear to God, you guys have been harassing me for months. you're right. I probably should have gotten it already. I apologize for the lack of videos. Jesus Christ, every time I'm here, I have to, I feel like the cheating husband who's caught again. I'll change, honey. I promise, baby. Not again. Videos will return very soon. And if and maybe you can look forward to travel videos on this channel from now on. Anyway, that's all the time I have for today. Thank you so much for those of you who are still sticking around and chatting with me over on social media. I love you guys. That's all the time I have for today. I'm Izzy, and I'm done. Can you imagine if this YouTube thing bottoms out in like a couple of months, and I'm like back in Canada with my tail between my legs begging for my old job? Oh God. Well,